Okay, so this week we got some stuff to share with you. Not specifically Bigfoot, but definitely weird and definitely something that's a phenomenon that seems to be happening in high Bigfoot activity areas. So before we tell you the recent stuff, I'm going to share my experience from about 10 years ago. Now, the topic of this is going to be these lights, these strange flashing blue lights that have been seen. 10 years ago, I was about a half a mile downriver from here. It was probably 11 o'clock at night. I was at a friend's house. It was a really foggy night, really low clouds, and it was late summer. We were sitting in her yard in our lawn chairs, just enjoying the spectacular light show that was coming from the direction of this river. And what we were seeing, to me at the time, I described as silent blue lightning. Although we didn't see streaks of light, what we saw was the clouds and the fog and everything just lighting up in these brilliant blue flashes that we couldn't tell where it was coming from. It wasn't coming from out of the sky. It wasn't above us. It wasn't on the highway. It was out by the river. It wasn't steady. It was intermittent. It was just like this brilliant blue light show, and we watched it for about an hour. So then, that was pretty awesome, but it's one of those things that you can't really relate it to anything, so you just kind of put it out of your head. So then, a few years ago, I was working at the gas station over at the store. At that time, you know, we had to pump gas manually, so I was working the pumps, and there was a man from Yakima stopped in, and while he was getting his gas, just making chit-chat, he asked me if I had ever seen any strange lights here in Greenwater. And before I could even answer him, he told me that he had been on the other side of the river, just across from us right here up on the hillside. He'd been bringing down his beehives. Said it was after dark. He's coming down the side of the hill, and he looks down at the river. He says the river is covered in mist, so he can't really see it, but what he can see are these brilliant blue flashes of light that keep coming from over the river, the area over the river. He said it wasn't in the sky, it wasn't anywhere that he could see the source. It was just coming from this mist over the river. And he said that as he was coming down the side of the hill, he could watch as these blue flashes just intermittently flashed, moving up and down the riverbed. Although, like I said, it was covered in mist and he couldn't see the source. So I thought that was really cool at the time, considering I had just seen something very similar to that a few years before. Okay, so now most of you probably already know we had a really big storm here just this last week. And this is the river. I have some other footage from the day after that I'll be sharing with you to show you what it looked like before. It's gone way back down now and everything. But yeah, there were some local people that were out here that night with spotlights out here looking out at the river and watching the trees go by and listening to the rocks and the boulders and everything crashing, because, you know, it can be pretty exciting. So, my friend Kris has come to me with this new report. It's not specifically a Bigfoot type thing, but like I said, there does seem to be some kind of a connection, although I'm not really sure what it is, about these blue lights. So, yeah, anyway, her and another friend of mine who I've known for many, many years, although he's not here to discuss it with us today, had an experience, and she's going to tell us what happened. So, Kris, what happened that night, Tuesday night?
It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and because the river was coming over the banks, those of us that lived in the cabins along the river back here had to evacuate. And so we went around to the front of the store, and we sat in the parking lot, a couple of us, just kind of seeing what the storm was doing and trying to stay safe. And all of a sudden in the sky above us started illuminating this really, really bright blue color. But we couldn't, at first I thought it was like the strobe from a cop car, but there was nobody there but us, and we looked all around and we couldn't see any reflection in the trees or off buildings. We couldn't see any source for this blue light. But it blinked in rapid, like maybe 1 second succession, very regular increments for maybe a minute or so. And then it stopped, and we looked around and we couldn't find a source for it. And eventually, it never started up again, so eventually we came back to see what the river was doing. And we parked just a few feet from where we're now standing with our headlights shining across the river to illuminate the debris. And so this was probably an hour to an hour and a half after we saw them in the store parking lot. Some more lighter blue, but the same kind of flashes, but lighter blue up in the sky across the river and above the trees, the way you got your camera pointing. Again, could not find a source for it. It just looked like it looked like there was some kind of an invisible dome above us that this blue light was illuminating. But it wasn't reflecting off the trees or the cabins or the vehicles or anything like that. It just seemed to be strictly illuminating the night sky, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's very similar to what I saw.
When we were in the store parking lot and it was doing its, pretty much 1 second interval flashes, and then it stopped doing that, and then it did it a few more times, but not at that same increment. It was longer increments, and it was a briefer time period. It only did it maybe 4 or 5 times, and then it was over with, which is why we ended up coming back here.
And what were you hearing when this happened?
Nothing. Absolutely no sound. Not like there was no lightning sound. We couldn't hear any sound that we could associate with this. It was absolutely quiet. There was no traffic going by because the road wasn't really, no one was going anywhere.
Yeah, the road was closed.
And we were sitting in the parking lot with our engines turned off, just sitting there, and didn't hear anything.
Was the electricity out by then?
I think so, but I don't have electricity, so I don't really notice.
Okay.
So I don't notice, but I think it was out.
Go ahead.
I'm almost positive because the store was dark.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a few other things that happened that night that I want to ask you about. You said before you saw the flashing blue lights, there was another light that you had described to me. Can you tell us about that?
Before the flashing blue light?
The white light.
Oh, that was when we were sitting over. That's when we pulled over here, and we had seen the faded blue light in the sky.
Yeah.
And then directly across, we watched this very bright, big white light. Again, couldn't hear anything. Coming directly towards us across the valley there, and I thought, well, maybe it's a helicopter. But we never heard anything. But then again, the river was real noisy that night.
Really?
So
Okay.
we probably wouldn't have heard it. But then it just disappeared. It was coming towards us and coming towards us and coming towards us, and I was watching it, and then where did it go?
Was it down low or up?
No, it was. You had to see it in between the trees coming at us. Like
So it was
down
pretty
the trees.
low.
Oh yeah.
Like a low
And
white
how
light.
fast was it moving?
I don't know how to gauge that.
Really? Okay.
I probably watched it come towards us for maybe 15-20 seconds.
Really?
Maybe.
So
And it was steady, coming directly at us, perfectly steady,
Wow,
and then
it
just
stopped.
gone.
just vanished.
Okay,
Right.
did it look like it was getting wider and wider?
No,
The light?
no, it looked like it was staying the same size, but it was getting closer. It was pretty much perfectly round. Really this very, very bright white color. It wasn't sweeping like you'd see a spotlight on a helicopter, or like you'd see on the wings, or the aviation markers that they have to have on their helicopters and airplanes. It was nothing like that. It was just a bright white light.
So if it didn't change perspective of the light getting wider or anything, what made the impression was that it was getting closer? That was it because it was getting lighter and lighter?
No, I could see. Well, because the perspective of it changed in the trees. This is how I used to gauge. It's what I used to describe where it was is because I was looking in the trees as it was coming across. So as it was coming towards us, even though it didn't appear to be getting bigger, you can tell by the gap it fills in between the trees is how I was going.
See.
I was judging its movement.
Okay, in relation to the trees.
In relation, because the trees are stationary.
Yeah.
So I was staring right at those, watching this, trying to see if it's going to go up and down. Is it a helicopter? Is that light going to move? Am I going to see other aviation lights? Is it from that logging camp? I mean, I had tons of questions about it that I really couldn't answer, but I tried to rule out helicopter and aviation lights, and then it was gone.
Yeah,
It
see,
just
now that in
suddenly
itself
gone.
is very weird that it would just vanish. It didn't move off.
Nope, it didn't go
Just
up,
gone.
it didn't go down, it didn't go side to side. It was just, we were sitting over here staring at it, and
Well,
It wasn't there.
I'm going to throw out something myself. I'm working on a video that has to do with orbs and the possibility of these. Because I've seen several of them, and I know Barb's had a couple experiences.
I have seen orbs with my own eyes, not just in pictures.
It could have been an orb because I got the impression it was floating. With a helicopter, you see certain movement. They have to move with the air currents or the wind or anything like that.
It's floating.
And it was
Besides what I
perfectly
saw.
perfectly steady.
No sound.
None. But if it did make sound, like I said, I don't know that we could have heard it.
There's no access to that area. Any roads that go over there are a good distance back from the river, way back against that hill. Actually, you can't see it. It's too foggy through the trees. You can't see it right now. But yeah, and the gates that lead to the bridges that cross to the other side are all locked and have been for years. So there's nobody over there that they would be rescuing.
And it was not a logging truck. It wasn't anything like that. It didn't move like a vehicle at all.
No.
Yeah, I don't want to be the person that sees every flash in the sky as sometimes we're flashing in the sky. Sometimes there's a logical explanation for it. I'm at a loss.
What really impressed me is that it's just not a light. They had it almost like it reflected against something that looked like a crystal clear bowl above the sky, and like it was a dome or an umbrella over the area.
The blue light, yes.
The blue light part.
The white light coming towards us was nothing like that, but the blue light above just illuminated like a dome.
Unbelievable.
But it didn't reflect on the trees, and that's what really was trippy.
Well, that is really strange. No lights reflecting.
No, we were looking for a ground source for it, or even for something hovering above us that we could find a source for, and we couldn't.
Right.
I mean, we really looked.
Yeah, that's how we were too that night that my friend and I were sitting down river watching it. It was like blue lightning in the fog. It was though everything was lighting up blue, but it wasn't turning things blue. It was the atmosphere that was blue.
Exactly.
And it wasn't like up in the sky above us. It was just in the mist in front of us in the direction of the river.
Very peculiar. If I had to give an analogy for something, it reminded me of heat lightning that I used to see when we lived in the Caribbean. There was no light pollution, and of course the weather pattern is different there than it is here. And we used to have what they call heat lightning, and it would just boom, illuminate everything, but it wasn't blue. It was more of a white type of lightning color.
Maybe this is cold lightning.
I don't know. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Right on. Another little thing. Let's get back to the Bigfoot stuff a little bit here. The evening before the storm hit, you sent me a couple messages. You were listening to Marvin Gaye, I believe?
It was like 9:30 at night, and I had the back door open. I was watching the river. This was the night before the storm.
Okay.
And the odor that I associate with the squatch that I named Oso was all of a sudden arrived and was very heavy. And I was playing Marvin Gaye. I listen to the same songs sometimes over and over if I really like them. And I was listening to Ecology song by Marvin Gaye, you know, Mother, Mother, and there's far too many of us dying. Anyway, and you know, the oceans are polluted and all that. Anyway, I was listening to that over and over. And I kept messaging you to let you know how long he'd been there. And I think he was there for an hour and a half or so.
I think the first message you sent, it said he'd been there since like 8:30,
right. And then the last message would have been around 9:30, 9:45.
Yeah.
And he was here that whole time. That odor is so pungent and so distinctively sewage that it's like you can feel the pungentness of it when you inhale.
That's pretty strong.
That's really strong.
Very distinctive. I don't know anything else that can be described as besides pungent sewage.
So he was around the entire time you were playing music?
The entire time.
And when did he leave?
When I last messaged you, I can't pull it up on my phone here, but I think it was around 9:45 when I sent you my last message.
Okay, so was that like when you turned off the music, or did it disappear while you were still listening to it?
It disappeared while I was still listening, and then I was getting cold, so I closed the back door anyway.
Okay, all right, and then you sent another message from the afternoon of the storm.
Yes.
It was, I got about 3 o'clock, I think.
3:30.
3:30.
I'm pretty sure it was 3:30. I had been over visiting you at work, and I walked back over here. This was a few hours before the storm hit, and I came back over here. It was about 3:30, and I opened the back door and was sitting there like I usually do, and Oso's odor. It was like, "Hi, I'm here."
Wow, so this would have been the next day.
The next day.
From when you were listening to the music.
About 3:30. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the storm hit that night, and.
Now you told me something that second time in the afternoon that you smelled it, that gave you an impression that you, looking back at it. Why don't you tell our viewers what that made you think?
I have nothing to substantiate this whatsoever, but I found it very puzzling. I was puzzled. His arrival at his or her arrival at that time of day under those circumstances puzzled me. And then I kind of questioned in my mind why. How come you're visiting again so soon? You know, why are you here again? And if I was to describe it, it was like having a thought put in my head that there was a storm coming this afternoon and he was coming by just to kind of give me a heads up.
Okay.
And I don't know if I just went. I didn't know what to make of that.
Wow.
So I just.
There could be a
A thought
connection.
put in my mind. It was brief. He was only here for that small couple of minute window of time and then gone.
The odor disappeared.
Disappeared, completely gone.
And then it was just that night that the storm hit and you actually had to be evacuated out of your home.
Yeah, they 1 o'clock in the morning, the river was over the banks, but I was still safe. But then about an hour and a half later is when my neighbor came and got me because the river was, really.
And this is the neighbor you're referring to as the person who witnessed these lights with you.
Yeah, the guy that you've known for ages.
Yes,
that same guy. Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, he's not willing to do an interview with us, but
no, he saw the same thing. He saw the same lights, and couldn't find an explanation for them. But didn't really want to go into discussion of it either. It was like, okay, we saw him, whatever.
Yeah, I think he's really uncomfortable with this whole.
Extremely.
Yes.
out of people's comfort zone, a lot of times people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I hesitate to say that Oso put that thought in my head, but I don't know. I try every time I have something that I think has been an encounter or an interaction. I try to find other reasons to rule it, other reasons for why it happened,
More
logical reasons.
Yeah.
And I can't explain why he was here and why that thought got put in my head. I can't.
Huh. Wow.
So that's the only.
Well, it makes sense to me because it was a really dangerous place to be out here that night.
Oh, it got wicked.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really bad. Actually, the more accurate description of the thought was that I was going to have to evacuate later, and so go take a nap now. Go get some sleep while I could. And I feel like a dumbass saying that, but that's exactly what the thought was.
Wow.
Was you should take a nap now because this is going to get bad, and you're going to have to haul ass later.
Oh,
and that's
wow,
exactly
okay.
what I did. I slept until like midnight, 1 a.m., and I got up and came out and checked stuff.
Wow.
But
cool.
It was just, it was peculiar, and I feel funny expressing it like that, but that's what happened.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing it with us. After you told me this story, first of all, let me say how once again you have totally stunned me by coming to me with a story of something I've already personally experienced. I just love it when you do that. But after you told me about that, I've done a little bit of research into this, and I've spoke with a few friends who have a little more knowledge on this. And there are a lot of reports of this blue flashing activity in high Bigfoot type areas. And it's not just here, it's around across the country. And I'm really personally kind of surprised that this isn't a phenomenon that gets more exposure, that more people don't discuss it. From one of the things that I learned was that this is something the Native Americans have always experienced, and to them they refer to it as the native spirit lights.
Spirit lights, yeah.
Yeah. So, if anybody else out there in YouTube land has any stories like this, just because it's not specifically a Bigfoot event, don't necessarily rule it out as being completely separate from Bigfoot, because there's a lot of weird things that go on, and it's always good to have this extra little bit of information in the back of your mind, because someday you may have that experience and then you'll have something to reflect back on. So yeah, just keep your mind open.
Yeah, and I didn't see the link until I talked to you about it the next day or a couple days later about the lights, and Oso had been here. That's when you were like, well, you brought up the whole Skookum the book,
yeah,
the Skookum Valley book, and other people who had that same experience, and you tied it in. I didn't know.
Yeah, see, I had never made that connection myself until after you told me about it. Even though I had this experience and I had heard of another experience locally, I never made that connection myself until I mentioned it to somebody else in the Bigfoot world, and they pointed out to me that yes, this is a very common phenomenon in areas with high Bigfoot activity.
With an open mind, there's always something new to consider or to learn.
Yes, there is.
That's the big catch, is the open mind part, because I wanted to dismiss it or find a rational explanation in logic.
Yeah.
And I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I still can't.
Well, before I started doing the Bigfoot thing, that's something that, looking back in hindsight, I know I did a lot, was when you experience something that your mind can't relate to, that it doesn't have a specific file that experience goes into, you have a tendency to just go, well, that was weird, and then you forget about it.
You
Like our
filter it
mutual
out.
friend.
Yeah,
Filter it.
yeah,
Like our mutual friend does. Just dismiss it.
yeah, yeah.
Out
to
of
me-
sight, out of mind. You don't think about it anymore. It's out.
Yeah.
It's too fascinating to dismiss. It's
Yeah.
it's like a puzzle.
It is. It's another key. It's another key to a bigger picture. And yeah, so if anybody out there in YouTube world has any experiences like this that they'd like to contribute, feel free to put them down in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And yeah, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And this has just been a really eye-opening week. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and show you the river footage from the day after the storm, and I guess that about wraps it up. Okay, so we've had this atmospheric river coming through, and it really dumped last night. The power's out again. This here is the White River. You can see how high it is. Got a big log jam over there. Actually, this is starting to drop back down. So if you look at the ground here, you can see the grass, how high it came last night. Here's the water line right there, right in front of me. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear this. It sounds like thunder. Thunder and gunshots. What it is the rocks and trees and debris crashing around down there, washing down river. Some of it's really loud. Oh, there goes a tree over there. There comes a big one up there. A couple of them. Wow, that's a good sized log there. Oh, here comes an even bigger one. How about that one gets hung up? It goes down the other side. Yeah, we'll back up for this one. Whoa, holy cow! Okay, that was fun. So, you might notice that I'm between this building that's right here and these big trees. There is a reason for that. I've seen these floods before when trees can be floating down here and you don't really see them because they're mostly underwater, and then they hit something and the tree will swing up and around out over the bank. So, yeah, I am keeping my distance, and I've got stuff between me here, or around me. But yeah, seeing that just jam right into the bank and snap like that. Get your heart pumping. Okay, so this is an example of what happens when the river is really, really high. This happened during the night of the storm. When I was here the other day, the day after, I assumed that this was left over from the wind damage from our storm a couple weeks ago, but it's not. This was actually shoved up out of the river up here. And you can see it only barely missed this cabin. Pretty crazy, huh? Like a giant spear.